Hello, welcome to Jewish Museum Milwaukee's Museum Moment. I'm guessing I'm a little early today because I realized this computer has an earlier time. So I'm gonna maybe just start a little early. The perils of modern technology. Let's see if I end this broadcast, I can't come back to it. So I can't pause it. Cool. Well, my name is Ellie Gettinger. I'm the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee. Jewish Museum Milwaukee is an amazing establishment on the east side of Milwaukee. And one of the things that we love to explore is our local history of local businesses, history of local stories in general. And a lot of these business type stories we cover in our permanent exhibit. Some of them we took on in an exhibit we did a couple of years ago called From Pushcarts to Professionals, The Evolution of Jewish Businesses in Milwaukee. And today, Manpower is one that had a pretty prominent role in that particular exhibit. It was a fascinating exhibit that really did kind of look at those immigrant roots and how people evolved within businesses, creating some things that ended up becoming like Manpower, global institutions. And so we're always interested in these stories. I'm always interested in the power of ideas and where they come from and how they evolve. And, that kind of thinking is this. Do you ever really know that this is the moment when you have that perfect, brilliant idea, or are you constantly waiting to know what that perfect, brilliant idea is? And in this case, there was no sense at the beginning that this was the perfect, brilliant idea that was going to launch a whole industry. So I'm just fascinated by the story. I'm excited to share it with you. And even though I'm a little early today, we're going to go ahead and jump into Manpower. So, as I said, Manpower is a really interesting business. It's a business that was founded by these two gentlemen. And the two gentlemen that you see here are Elmer Winter, and he's the gentleman on the left, and Aaron Scheinfeld. And they're brothers-in-law who actually have a closer relationship than I think most brothers-in-law do, in that Winter, who is 12 years Scheinfeld's junior, starts working with Scheinfeld while from law school. And he actually initially starts working at a publishing house in Chicago, goes out to Can you hear me now? Great. Okay, we're keep going. So he hears that Scheinfeld, he goes out to lunch on his first week with the owner of this publishing company, who says, "We're very open. We're excited to have you guys here. We just don't have any Jews who work here." And not knowing that Elmer Winter was Jewish. So Winter goes back to his supervisor that afternoon and says, "I'm Jewish. I can't." The guy said they don't accept Jews. And his supervisor says, "Well, he doesn't mean Jews like you." So Winter comes back at him. He means, "Oh, you mean people that look Jewish or sound Jewish?" He's like, "But that's a Jew like me." And he walks out. Now, this is 1936-ish. It's the middle of the Great Depression. And he has taken on a stance here that says, "I'm going to not be working." So he ends up working with his brother-in-law, not earning that much money. I think it's $30 a month, or maybe it's $30 a week during the Depression. And he's actually supported by his wife, Nanette. So it's an interesting story. And I think the story of women and their prominence and their role, she's a social worker in the story, is an important piece of this, that both of these men marry women who are women who push them, and one of the things that I'm fascinated about in general is the women behind the idea. So as they're working together after the war, they're finding that there's this massive labor shortage. One night, in the middle of the night, they need to have a brief typed up for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They have to type this brief up. It has to happen. It has to happen quickly. And so they're in this kind of place, they don't have a secretary who's available to do it. They actually have to go to a secretary that's retired. This is one of those pieces that I spent a lot of time trying to find. I put J on this. I just wanted to know if we could find the name of this mythical secretary who became the genesis of the idea for Manpower. Where do you go if you need someone to work, but you don't necessarily need someone full time? Where does that come from? How do you staff that need? How does that staffing need work in all of these other operations? Initially, they were just thinking, we need a typist for one night of work. So they find this, they go back to this mythical anonymous secretary. Someday someone can tell me her name. I would love it. And she fills this void, but it becomes the basis in 1948 for Manpower. And that's how the company started, from this moment. They, as I said, are brothers-in-law and have an interesting kind of Milwaukee history in and of itself. That, first of all, Scheinfeld, who ends up becoming less kind of publicly known with the company, because he ends up moving to Chicago. He, is a great ideas guy, lets Winter be more the kind of driving force. But Scheinfeld's father was the preeminent rabbi in Milwaukee. Rabbi Scheinfeld, as pictured here, he was the rabbi at Congregation Beth Israel. He was the chief rabbi of Wisconsin. He married Golda Meir, and he was the 10th generation of rabbinic line in his family. None of his children become rabbis, but there is this constant sense of ethics in business that I would trace back not just to Winter, but to Scheinfeld and his particular route. As I said, they're brothers-in-law, and they marry two of the Rosenberg sisters. Rosenberg's was a department store in Milwaukee, and the gentleman in the bow tie in the middle is A.P. Rosenberg. He was a Jewish communal leader. He had 4 daughters, all pictured here, with his wife as well. And you can see on the far left is Aaron Scheinfeld and his wife, and then Nanette is in the middle. That's Elmer Winter's wife, and that's how they met. That's how they connected. The business was very small at first, and in fact, it lost money in its first year. Their initial opportunity is that they're going to go ahead and they're going to try and place people. They open up in a storefront at 3rd and Plankinton. They bring in old furniture from Elmer Winter's father's house. They have people lining up for jobs, but they don't necessarily have jobs for those people. In order to get to more of this story, I want you guys to hear Elmer Winter tell it. So here he is. Maybe. This is new for me. I'm trying something new. Perhaps I can't do it. Oh.
Getting brief out for the court. We got a former secretary to come back, and she saved the day for us, and just really, you may not believe it, but as a sideline to our law practice, we decided we'd open this company, a little company, a storefront about the size of that corner. That was how it started, with the old furniture. And we had trouble getting started. And sometimes I can't believe some of this stuff really happened. But, I'm going back more than 50 years now, but I remember we started Manpower. We got the name from a fellow in Chicago. It was a terrific name. And we ran an ad for women, come to work when you want, as long as you want. We got really a long line of people up 3rd Street wanting to apply for a job. And we didn't have any business. And I called a number of people that I knew over the years. And everybody said, no, we can't use temporary help. You won't know our business. At any rate, it was really rough going, but I did something that I think really helped quite a bit. I went to a friend of mine who had a little printing shop, You'd get these penny postcards. Those days you get a postcard for a penny. But this big, there's a stamp on it. Print on there, we would like to apply for this job, and then leave some space, and this is called Manpower. So on Sunday, I had 3 daughters. We'd sit around the kitchen table, take the Milwaukee Journal, and my wife and I would check off stenographers, typists, and then we'd cut them out, paste them on these little cards. We mail them out to the people who are running the ads.
So you can see there's this like whole family part dynamic that's part of this this business that already you've got brothers-in-laws, and then the whole family is coming in to make the business a success. They're all writing the penny postcards. So as I said, the first year they lost about I think it's $9,000. The second year they turn a profit, and by 1953 the idea has gone really big and beyond just a agency in Milwaukee. That instead of just thinking about Milwaukee, they're thinking about national. And there are 2 big things that are happening. One is a little bit earlier. The first is on the grow again, is this start the idea of franchising this business services program. You know, that it's, oh dear, I've gone blank. They start the idea of franchising this idea, and people can buy a franchise and then can have Manpower in their universe. And then they also really think about women going to work. And it's interesting that Elmer Winter very early on sees that women are they need jobs, they need to be connected. These can't necessarily be like 9-to-5 jobs. They might need flexibility. They might need to be able to come in when they have time, when they don't have time. There might be all sorts of things that shift. In fact, in 1961, 2 years before the feminine mystique, here is what Winter is saying in an article right upon publication of one of his 13 books. He writes in the San Francisco Examiner, they write about him, that he has said most women don't want to be household hostages. So this idea that women should be involved and find work outside, not just for the money, but for the enrichment, for the social stimulus, and for that kind of supporting the family, that's an important piece of the workforce. Everything about Manpower is not just about you're going to put people in a place, you're going to provide them with training. They kind of shift the way the job market works. They come up with the word temp. This was a word that was coined by Manpower. They come up with the idea of bringing in seasonal workers or and finding all sorts of new ways of looking at your workforce. That yes, you might have a permanent workforce, but then you have people who come in and out, and then they look at this in terms of opportunities to train labor and to create new markets. There are Manpowers in so many different places all over the world at this point, all from this same kind of fabric. In each place, as they moved to a place like, say, France, they discovered that there already was a pretty active and robust temporary workforce. So they had to look at where were their needs, and they found that there were needs in security guards and there were needs in truck drivers. So instead, they flipped their understanding there to those areas. So always kind of that sense of it's not a one size fits all. It's what each country, each locale that we're into, what they're going to need to create the workforce that is going to best suit that city or country. They've been really committed to engaging people in work since their founding. And these are 2 ideas of this idea of engaging youth. One is a picture of Winter opening up something called Youth Power, which was a program that ran in Milwaukee for many years. In this case, the first day of this, they had 750 teenagers, apply for summer jobs in Milwaukee. The other part of this is that he created a contest for a summer action program where there were gifts of up to I think $3,000 was the number one prize. in 1972 for an idea that had come from a youth to change the city. So really this idea of investing in the city and investing in the youth as the future of a workforce was embedded in early Manpower. So Manpower today is in downtown Milwaukee. It's in so many countries, so many different places. It is one of the largest temporary staffing agencies. They see themselves, and it was as a kind of global market, they see themselves as an ethical company. And it was interesting in Elmer Winter's oral history, he talks about this idea of, is it a Jewish company? And he says that, he was like, well, is it a Jewish company? And when Aaron and I started it, it was a Jewish company because we were two Jewish guys. And then Mitch Bromstein takes it over. And, maybe it's still a little bit of a Jewish company. And then their third CEO is a guy, Jeff Jers. He's not Jewish. And they're on their fourth CEO. But if you think about an 80-year history with 4 CEOs or 75-year history with 4 CEOs is pretty impressive. And he says, no. But I'm going to challenge that assumption because there is this thing that that when I was on a tour of Manpower a couple of years ago during that Push Carts to Professionals exhibit that they described, in which they described, Maimonides' 8 areas of philanthropy. If you give without really wanting to give, that would be the lowest level, but you're giving anyway, but you're still on there because you're giving. And the number 1 is providing the ability for someone to change their life circumstances. That's number 1. That's the number 1 thing you can do as a philanthropist. And when I was visiting Manpower, this is what they described. And in fact, they used Maimonides as their site. So while they might not be a Jewish company in the realm of their CEO is Jewish at this point, there still is that deeply rooted sense of ethics that is permeating the Manpower community. So I'm delighted to be able to share this story. I have a feeling we could come back and do a whole other piece on Elmer Winter and everything else that he was into, from writing books to art to all of these different presidential councils to economic development in Israel. And clearly we could do a whole thing on the Rosenberg sisters, and because there's a lot there too. So just know this is probably the first in a series. Thank you so much for joining me, as always, on this slightly tricky museum moment. As always, thanks to Robin Cohen, our generous supporter. Next week, we'll be exploring Theresienstadt, and particularly the Red Cross visit to Theresienstadt. So I hope you'll join us for that, and have a wonderful day.